Glad you're watching Outnumbered. New York City's police union is calling for a boycott of movies by Quentin Tarantino. Why? He took part in an anti-police rally in Manhattan over the weekend. He's an award-winning director, and he took the mic. Tarantino told the crowd, quote, "When I see murders, I do not stand by. I have to call the murderers, end quote. The rally held just 4 days after the killing of a New York City police officer. Randolph Holder was shot in the forehead while chasing a suspected gang member through East Harlem. Also, FBI Director James Comey is linking the wave of violence scrutiny overall with a rise in crime. He says officers have become less aggressive as police brutality is under the microscope, and criminals are getting bolder. Tony, as I come out to you, I want to talk about the timing of this with Tarantino, because I mentioned the police officer who just died a few days ago here in Manhattan. He says, it's like this. It's unfortunate timing, but we've flown in all the families to go and tell their stories. The cop that was killed, that's a tragedy too, end quote. But we have to get a rally.
Well, it's never appropriate to call cops murderers, particularly when they risk their lives to protect us. You know, the thing that's particularly interesting to me is Cornel West, one of the organizers of this, and this was organized, remember, by a very radical group. I think there's some form of the Communist Party in the United States. He said this was to show love for the victims' families of violence from cops in their mind, right? How do you show love by calling cops murderers? I mean, it seems to defy the even purpose of it. But you know what? Let's not give Quentin Tarantino too much attention, because he's a fool, and most of these Hollywood A-listers who jump into political debates knowing very little and only agitating, I think, are fools. The problem is exactly what FBI Director Comey has said, what Commissioner Bratton here in New York has said, which is there is potentially a chilling effect, because if you're a police officer, you used to do your job, and if you made a mistake, there was the impression, or at least the idea, the presumption you made a mistake in good faith. Now you're persecuted, prosecuted, and completely maligned in the media, and that, whether they want to admit it or not, is going to have an unfortunate chilling effect, and the loser are the people protected by cops.
And what are the chances you hear Hollywood speak out on this, right?
Oh, no.
You won't hear
Definitely
from
not.
them. But this is such a misuse of power, right? And that's the whole point. He's using his power to make a statement for everyone. And in the act of love and the act of support, he's hurting an entire community and hurting the police force and making for a very dangerous situation.
Well, and what you're pointing out, too, is so critical, Sandra, because he potentially could make it worse. Right? He has made violence humorous in his films. Pulp Fiction, a feel-good movie about a lot of killing and a lot of blood, but in the context of don't you find it funny? He did do a rom-com. It didn't do well. I think it was called True Romance. Kennedy?
Oh, he was a screenwriter for True Romance, but he has since disavowed himself from the movie, which I actually
From
really
any romantic comedy whatsoever?
From romance itself. He is an unloving person. And, you know, I can identify with what Cornel West was saying. You know, we love these people. We want to make sure there are no more victims at the hands of police. And in a lot of communities, there is a perception that the cops are the enemy. Unfortunately, this sort of emotionalism, this incompetent rhetoric at the hands of Quentin Tarantino, not only does it make the cops' lives worse and makes a tough job even more dangerous, it exacerbates problems in these communities where you can have rational discourse about criminal justice reform and police brutality. And some of those preconceived ideas, but we're not getting anywhere. We're not getting any.
I want to point out something important. The police officer, and only important in the context of the conversation that's going on that's race-based in the United States. He was black, this cop who died. This was, I believe, black-on-black crime. We have a lot of that in some cities, right? This was a perfect opportunity for guys like Cornel West to stand up there and say, you know what? I know we're all gathered here, but let's start with the problem in one particular community and talk about that first.
Well, you'd never know that he was black, because the Black Lives Matter movement doesn't care about who is getting gunned down in our cities. I mean, you look at how he was gunned down. This was a criminal that was on the streets, let go by a liberal judge here in Manhattan and sent to rehab when he should have been in prison. And what did she say? Oh, I made a mistake. That's what progressives do all the time. They push these policies that make no sense through. They ruin cities. They get people killed. Not just black police officers, Harris, but black men in very dangerous neighborhoods, because the police are out there protecting them. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Black lives matter, just not in democratic cities. They don't. They don't care about them. And you look at the cover of the newspaper for my neighborhood, New York, crime has gone through the roof under Bill de Blasio. Police feel like they have targets on their back. They can't do proactive policing. They get rid of stop and frisk. I mean, there has been a movement to take the tools out of cops' hands so that they can do their jobs and make them sitting ducks. And this protest was disgusting, atrocious timing after that cop was murdered.
Every time I say this, I see the blowback in social media, but there's a hashtag that's out there with All Lives Matter.
Kennedy asked
They do.
Why is that
They
even
do and they
controversial?
should.
Yeah.
No, I just said, who's Quentin Tarantino going to call when his house is broken into, when he's assaulted? Who's he going to call? And how does he think police officers are going to react to him? And I'm sorry, he's a smart guy. He's an incredible writer. He's adding nothing to this discussion.
Maybe Uma Thurman. She can come defend him.
Bernie Sanders